Hello world, I'm Don, and in today's video I'm going to take an impromptu portrait, first through DxO Photolab 5, and then into Radiant Photo. So one of the things that you will notice about this portrait when you see it is that it is at a bit of an angle. So I had the light set up essentially so that I could have the light hitting me in the face for what I was actually doing, which is a bit of a portrait of my son and I. So it's one that I've done maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and the light, like I said, just hits the mask of the face. I do each of us individually, and then where my face goes into shadow, I overlay his face. So it looks like we're standing side by side, each with this light hitting us. Anyway, long story short, I was set up to do that. So I had softbox right in front of me, had a grid on it, really tight light beam. And when I was done, I thought I wanted to also just grab a bit more of a portrait to be able to run it through DxO, but also just to try out some of the skin tools in Radiant Photo. So I did this one, but I was a bit lazy and I didn't want to move my light, so I've got my face turned to kind of grab enough light to make the portrait work. So that's why the slightly unusual angle. It's an interesting result, and I actually like it quite a bit in the end. But it definitely the nature of that image gave Radiant a few challenges. So it's interesting to see. It's not, I wouldn't say it's limitations, but it's maybe things that don't fall exactly under the fully auto category. Though, because it's got a, what is it, sort of a customizable AI scenario going on, I guess technically speaking I could set up my own sort of AI for that particular instance, but I'll need to play with that more. So let's jump in and have a look. So here is the image, and I'm going to just start things off with using this second image, which has got a wee color checker in it. And I'm going to grab a white balance from that, and then I'll just copy that across to the other one. So I'll just scroll down here, grab my picker. And I tend to like this very first one. This top row is designed specifically for skin. It's just a shade different than if I came down to the pure grays. Not a huge difference. There we go. So I'll just give an old right click and copy my correction settings. Give an old right click down here and paste my correction settings, and all correction settings will do fine. So that has fixed up my white balance to start with. Now that I've done that, I'll go ahead and move that down so that we can see the image larger. Okay, so I'll start out with exposure, come over to the light tab, and I'll come down to exposure compensation. I'm not going to do smart lighting because smart lighting wants to raise those shadows too much, and I actually want to keep this reasonably dark to keep a bit of the mood to it. So I will use regular exposure, and I'm going to go up about 0.55 or so. And I'm also going to come here to selective tone, and I'll raise my shadows maybe about 15 or so, because I do want to bring them up a bit, just not as much as smart lighting would have done. And I'll also raise my midtones maybe to about 10-ish. So that's probably looking pretty good. Now the other thing that I want to do in the light tab is come up to my contrast space, and I'm going to reduce my contrast overall because I find that just the sort of default on DxO is pretty strong contrast, and I think that especially for portraits it's often nice to remove it. And of course, as soon as I turn that on, it is not recognizing the face. If it recognizes the face, it won't put this micro contrast, but because the face is turned so much to the side, it did not recognize the face. So let's just bring that down to right about there. Right, so let's now hop across to the color tab again. And I've already taken care of white balance, but I'm going to come to my saturation slider, and I'm going to bring that down a little bit, maybe about -10 or so, like that. And I'm also going to take a look at this. So generic rendering, you see that it's currently on Nikon Z6. And yes, I did get a lovely Father's Day gift just a few days ago. In my neck of the world, Father's Day just happened. So new camera there, which is exciting. But watch the skin. I'm going to put it on DxO Portrait, and you'll just notice that that skin just lightens up a smidge. So it just deals slightly differently with the reds. I'm also going to come down here to the HSL space, and I'll just leave it straight where it is, just on the reds. I'm going to reduce saturation, maybe about -15. I might come back to that and put it up a touch, but I'm just going to do this one first. And I'm going to take my oranges and I'm going to put them up maybe about +10. Actually, I think I've taken a touch too much red out. I'm going to maybe put that on -10. There we go. Because I don't want to take too much red out of the skin, but I did just want to soften that red tone a little bit. Excellent. And the other thing I want to do in here is in the toning section just below. And there's a small choice here for portrait. And if you just watch what happens there, again, just lighten that skin just a little touch more. Again, just impacting those reds in a different way. Now, what else? I'm going to jump into local adjustments. And just a few things I want to do in local adjustments. So where the light is hitting here is just a touch harsh. So I'm going to grab a brush and I'm going to just put right there. And then I'm actually going to just bring it in 1:1. Maybe make it a touch smaller. I'm just going to come straight down the bridge of the nose there, and just a little bit right over here as well. And I'm just going to pull a little bit of micro contrast, a little bit more micro contrast out of that. Maybe around there-ish, around -30-ish. Let me just have a peek here. Yeah. Just sort of softens that space just a little bit more. Makes it look just a hint less specular to me. So the other thing that I want to do is I'm going to get a new brush, do my little plus icon there. I'm going to brush over the eyes. I'm not being too careful with this. I'm going to go there. I'll tidy, there's a little bit came onto the nose there. I'm just going to hold my Alt key, and that'll turn into my eraser brush. And I'm just going to take it off of that nose there so that it's only just on the eye. I think I'm okay with the little bit of overlap that's happening there and there. I just didn't want it bleeding onto the nose. And in that spot, so what am I going to do? I'm going to raise the exposure just a little bit, maybe 0.25, 0.3, something like that. And I'm going to, on the eyes, just raise the saturation a smidge. Maybe not a heap, maybe around there, around +15-ish. And then I'm also going to just add a little bit of sharpness. It's interesting, I notice, just watch the eyes there with the sharpness. See if it'll do it. Yeah, you see how they, I mean, obviously they're gonna, but they get this strange pattern in them. And at first when that happened, I was like, what on earth is happening? And I actually think what it is, which is really interesting to me, is it was a softbox with a grid on it. And I think those are maybe the fine lines of the grid when the sharpness gets intense. The fine lines of the grid are actually getting kind of artifacty and chunky because they're so tiny. I don't know. That's just my guess. That's the best guess I can come up with. So sharpness just up a little bit. Excellent. And just one more thing I want to do really for this one. I'm just going to come back out here. Well, actually, I had two things, I suppose. One more thing in local, and then I just realized I still have not cropped it. And in local adjustments, I'm just going to grab the auto mask brush, and I want to just bring this shirt down a little bit. I had wanted it to be a black shirt. I'm going over the edges here, by the way, because it's a black background and it's not really going to matter. I'm not going to go over the edges onto the skin. There, I will keep that little central circle decently away from the skin. But over here where it's going into black anyway, I'm just going straight over the edges. Just keeps it well blended. You could do this a number of different ways. This just seemed like an okay way to do it, and I just want to bring that down a bit. Let's see. I mean, not crazy. Maybe about there. And I'm actually going to just take a bit of saturation out of it too, because I had really, it's actually a dark blue shirt. I had been hoping for a black t-shirt, but my black t-shirt was in the laundry when I was doing this, so I will make it be a black t-shirt. Excellent. So a little bit of a before and after, quite a drastic change there. I think that's looking pretty nice, and I think the skin tone is pretty decent. Got reasonably good transitions as we kind of go from these lighter areas towards the shadows. I think the shadows are pretty darn dark. I see, you know, red 35, green 19, blue 18 kind of deal. They're pretty dark shadows through there, but they look good. Oh, I should. Lots of these things are things that wouldn't go away, but that was an actual spot, so I'm just going to quickly heal that. There we go. Perfect. And then right, and again, I keep forgetting to crop, and I'm just going to bring this to a square crop, given the shape of things, and I'll bring this in a bit. Maybe about to like there-ish. Putting that third just above the eyes, just a little bit. I want there to be, it's just trying to get it, I find it a constant battle to try to get a nice amount of space above the head, and things kind of feeling nice like this, and I find that if I bring that down and try to, you know, if I try to get all fancy and put that straight on the third, then I don't enjoy the amount of space that's there. So oopsie, I knew that was going to happen. Why is that doing that? I maybe need to click into it again. Do that, click there, we go. That seems to be fine, so I'll put that about there. Bring that down, bring that up, and that's probably pretty good for a crop. Nice. Again, a little before, a little after. Now I'm going to, just for interest's sake, I'm going to take this across to Radiant Photo and see what kind of difference or improvement I can make in there. So I need to bring this up. I'll send it across as a DNG. I have done that a couple of times since I've had it, and it seems to work just fine. So I'll just go here to Export to Application, Radiant Photo, Export DNG, all corrections applied. And of course, if I put that down, I can do DNG with denoise and optical corrections only, which I think would be a whole lot like if I had, what's that little tool called? The thing that you can use with Lightroom. I don't know. It's jumped straight out of my head, but I think you probably know what I mean. But anyway, I think that's the sort of thing that it would make, but I can actually include all of my corrections from here, so that's lovely. Put that in a DNG and export. This will mark the first time that I've actually verbally asked anyone who's watching to like and subscribe, but I'm going to make that jump. I'm not too far away from 500 subscribers, and it does actually make a really big difference. So it's free. If you get any value out of these whatsoever, I'd really appreciate a like, a subscription, whichever works for you. Okay, just took me a minute there to get everything resized, but I think I'm good to go. So this photo's come in, and you're probably looking at it going, wow, that doesn't look very good. And it has, no, so there's the original, just slide that across. It has given it a whack, and you know, and I think that probably it's trying to lift things too much, and I think that's what's making it look not right. So looking over here, it's gone to Smart Presets and it's detected it and it's applied the people one. You know, if I come to quick edits here, I think that's where I'll see it. Yes, it's applied people over here. And I could, of course, you know, come up and lessen that and play around with that way. But I'll actually just go into my detailed edit and go a different direction with this. So I'm going to kind of ignore what it's done. Let's see, I can make that go away, can't I? Ignore what it's done. And I'll come over here to Radiant Portrait just to get a starting place. I'll come down here to Rugged Skin because, hey, that is me. So when I do that, you can see that looks quite a bit better, although you can see it's gone a little bit heavy-handed on the skin softening, but we will come back to that. So that's fine. It's a starting place for me. Now, I notice here it's interesting because of the tilt of the head. We've got this smearing here where it's attempting to lighten my eye bags, and it's positioning it not quite right because it's not quite sure how to deal with the angle of the head, which is fairly extreme. So we'll take a look at that as we go through anyway. Right, I'll just move that to the side, and let's see. I'm going to come here and just turn off face and skin for now. And come back here. Maybe bring that out a little bit. Right, so I'll come into tone. In tone. I'm not going to do much with exposure. I'm actually reasonably happy with the exposure. And again, if I try to put on exposure, you can see that's a lot of what was causing the undesirable look. I can bring it down. You know, I could put it on 10 or something like that if I wanted. And that's a lot closer. And, you know, part of me kind of likes that, but I think I'm going to leave that one off for now. But that's passable. That's just a how I'm feeling in the moment kind of decision. I like this one, light diffusion. Watch this area here when I click on light diffusion. See, it's kind of evened that out a bit. It's also done a bit of work down there. It's just on sort of halfway. Skin and depth bias also, I think we'll just watch as I click that on. Just shifts the contrast a little bit, and also impacting the colors in some way by the look of things. And that's maybe all. I'm not going to do something like super contrast. I'm not in the mood for that. You totally could. It's workable, I think, but it's a little bit heavy for me for a portrait. Depth, yeah, looks okay, but I'm going to leave it off. White point and black point, I'm just going to leave B. I think I'm reasonably happy with what's going on there. I'll come down to color, and I'm just going to click on fidelity. It's a little bit of a change to this because there is, even though I've taken a lot of the saturation out of it, there's a bit of blue in it. And I think I mentioned in my last video, I mean, it's fidelity. It's about trying to have true and accurate colors, but it does seem to impact. And again, I'm sure I read at some point that one of the reasons it does is because digital sensors have trouble portraying blues properly. And so there's a bit of, it's extra noticeable in those. But I find it does impact sort of the reds a little bit too in the face, in the skin tone. So I will leave that on. And I think that's all I'm going to put there. No sky toning, no foliage, none of that. Cool, I'm just going to come back up here so I can close this again. Details already on. Now, just out of interest, oops, put that back into 100. Yeah, it's a little bit, not too bad. A little bit of, I don't want that much sharpening anyway because I've already done some sharpening. There's some natural sharpening goes on just in DxO. So I will bring that, I'll leave that on a little bit, but I'll bring that down maybe to 25 or so. Just want to be really mindful of those little weird lines that can appear in those highlights in the eyes. So I'll close that. Okay, now I'm not going to do anything else there. There are, if you were into that sort of thing, maybe especially if you had opened this as a raw file and you had more to do, there quite a few exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, those sort of traditional tools down there and finishing tools, but I'm not going to use any of those right now. Come over here to the people. Going to put on this and see. So this is, to my eye, it's really similar to what this face detect sort of thing was like in Perfectly Clear. So I'm hoping to see this updated because it does feel not 100%, it's not nailing the position of those eyes. And you see there when I do that. So let me put that there. You can see the fuzz goes there. If I do that, I get a little bit on the nose there. So I'm just going to be mindful of that as I continue. So place the eyes. That's a good start. I'm going to come here to eyes, eye enhance. Not going to do too much on this, maybe 15-ish, just a little bit. I had already brightened the eyes and added some contrast and saturation in DxO, so I don't need to do too much more. Dark circles, I'm going to turn off because, again, with the angle of the face, it's just not, see how that's hitting the nose there? And it's just because of its proximity to this eyeball. I'm not sure what it, or if there even could be a solution to that, but I'm just not going to use it right now. It's a fine tool. I've used it heaps in the past. The dark circles often helps if you have a more front-on sort of image. So I'm really giving it a challenge here. So I'll leave the eyes just like that. Face, I don't think anything. I'm not showing my teeth. My lips look plenty sharp. If you want to see, I'll do the face contouring. Pulls my cheeks in a little bit. Actually does a pretty good job of that considering my face is side on, but I don't want any. And coming down here to skin, I'll just turn it on. I'm going to turn off the smoothing because it's obviously too much. It's looking quite waxy there, isn't it? So I can live with my ripply old skin. So we'll leave that there. Blemish removal. Just see if it's doing much. Yeah, a little bit. It's like I noticed like where this some of these bumps, especially on my head and whatnot, you can see that it's just softening the transition between them. It's not removing them completely, but it is softening the transition. Infrared removal, I love this. Again, things just for pulling the red out of things, and then shine removal. I will leave a little bit of shine removal on, but again, it's one of those things. If you crank it, it gets not right. So you have to be careful with it. I think just a little dash, as with many of these things, it's like cayenne pepper. Just going to put a little dash on there. Nice. Excellent. So that's that, and that's all. I'm not going to. Again, I could come over here if I were interested and do some color grading. I've got these different looks here, and you can toggle that down and get a sense for what it's going to look like, etc. But I'm not interested in that just now, so I'll just leave that be. Nice. So I'm just going to click on the image to get a wee before and after. Not a massive difference, but it does refine it. It's a little bit smoother transitions, maybe possibly a little bit nicer skin color itself. So just I'll go ahead and save this, and let's see. So we'll do. This answers a question that I had as well about 16-bit. So it will do 16 or 8 JPEG, PNG. Which I'm sure is an improvement, because I'm sure that in the past it could only do 8-bit files, if I am remembering correctly. And here we have options for Adobe ProPhoto, etc., etc. So I'll just leave it on Adobe and press save. Very fast rendering of files, I have to say. Right, so here we are. So this is the NEF. This is what was rendered, the DNG, which was rendered to send to Radiant. And then here is the file that Radiant has worked on. So yeah, again, for this particular file, not a massive difference, but a nice difference. I think, again, I really do like the color of the skin. I think that's come out, and it really does make some of these transitions a little bit softer, a little bit, yeah, just a little bit more flattering, so to speak. So I was pretty pleased with how that came out. Quite enjoyed my processing within DxO. I think maybe it's the first time I've done that little trick where I've gone down to the HSL and brought down the reds and brought up the oranges just a little bit. I don't know that you'd need to do that for everybody. I think it depends on the skin tone. I find I capture extra red, and not everybody does. Some people capture more naturally. I don't really understand why that is, but there you have it. So, but I thought it was a good little technique, and it's one that I'll definitely play with again in the future. As for Radiant Photo, I think it did a good job in the end. It did a subtle job given what I wanted to do, but I especially like the things that it did with the color there. And yeah, a couple of challenges in terms of the fact that it wanted to sort of bring that exposure up so much. So it wasn't quite ready for such a dark portrait. So that's interesting, but again, something that I might play with. And also that little niggle about how it does under eye bags, how it lifts those up, and how with the face at an angle, a piece of that was jutting out onto the background. And it, if I think about it, it makes perfect sense. What do I know what it's doing underneath the surface and to lighten those eye bags, and so that's going to happen. And I thought the solution for me, should I come across that, would be to probably just use it as a plug-in in Photoshop, and that way when I bring it back from the plug-in, I can just mask out that little bit that goes over onto the background, so I can just be a little bit more selective as such. So yeah, a little bit of interest. Now I've got another video that's going to drop really, really soon. I don't know that I'll quite get to it for a couple of days, but most of it's done. Churning through is the tricky bit. Yeah, shortly after I started this one, I think I maybe did this portrait at the weekend, and then during that week I actually did a headshot session, which is some pretty more normal, straightforward faces. And I used Radiant Photo for that. So I'm going to do another video where I just show in fact, in that instance for those headshots, I actually just used Nikon's software, NX Studio. I found it did a really nice, quick, easy job with skin because I could use the portrait settings. The portrait, I forget what they call it. What do they call it? Yeah, scene select, something to that effect. I don't know. It's gone out of my mind, but you know how you can have landscape or portrait, etc., etc. But anyway, in NX Studio, it did a really nice job. It was so easy. The headshots themselves were well lit. Almost no work on my part in terms of just getting them to a nice place in there with a nice contrast level for skin. And then I ran them all through Radiant Photo, and yeah, it was great. Fantastic time saver. So I don't have permission to use most of those, but at the end of that session, I sat myself down in front of the camera, took a quick snap, and I can kind of show you that Radiant process through there. I won't do the NX Studio process through there. I'll just do the Radiant process. So if you're interested in that, watch out for it. It will be coming soon. With that, I'll say bye-bye and hope to see you again soon. Cheers.